Hi guys, today I'm going to be doing the springtime book tag. So I originally saw this tag on Bookable's channel. I'll leave her URL down below, and it seems like a lot of fun, so I figured I'd give it a try. It is definitely more wishful thinking on my part, because I live in New England and spring for us does not start for like at least another month, but we have had a couple of like 50-degree days, so I feel it coming. It feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel now, so I'm very excited for warmer weather. So jumping right into it, the first question is, how do you decorate your bookshelf? It's pure chaos kind of at the moment. It's kind of constantly a work in progress. I, as you can see here, have a stack of my TBR books for the month. I wouldn't really call that decorating, but that's kind of just where they end up. I also have a couple little like Funko guys. And I would like to eventually have Funkos kind of more near like the books they're associated with. So this is like Jon Snow, and I keep him by my Game of Thrones books. This is Dwight Schrute from The Office. So he doesn't quite belong here, but he's just so stinking cute. And I don't really have another place for him at the moment. So I have a couple of things like this on my bookshelf. I also have a couple family photos. I've got this letterboard that I got from Owl Crate. I am slowly collecting more like bookish decorations from book boxes like Owl Crate and stuff. So hopefully I can fill my shelf more with those. But at the moment, it's sort of like just a hodgepodge of little knickknacks that I like and don't have anywhere else to put. I also have this cute little felt Wooloo Pokemon that I got about a year or two ago, I think now, and he's just super cute. I love him. I do have some plants on a couple of my other smaller bookshelves, but this corner doesn't really get enough light to decorate with plants. So yeah, I'm kind of constantly playing around with it. I don't really decorate my bookshelves seasonally. I just kind of go for the cute aesthetic. I am quite drawn to sort of like the floral-y, springtime-ish stuff, so that is typically kind of how I decorate as a whole. But yeah, my bookshelves aren't quite there yet. Question 2 is, recommend a book with a beautiful nature description. I have a couple for this. The first one is Among the Beasts and Briars by Ashley Poston. I actually have the Owl Crate edition as well with these beautiful sprayed edges. The covers for this are beautiful. And as you can see, it's quite naturey, just, you know, the vibe of it from the cover. And this book was so much fun. Follows a girl named Ceres, and she lives in a kingdom called Aloria, and she is the royal gardener's daughter. So you kind of get this garden magical vibe. She has this magic in her blood that helps her grow things. And I've always said if I ever had a superpower, I'd want it to be like a magical green thumb, sort of like that girl from that movie Sky High. I've always been really drawn to nature-y magic. I've always thought it was so cool. And yeah, so she ends up on this adventure through this dark, cursed woods. Again, she's got her magic to kind of aid her as needed. She has a fox companion who can talk. It was a lot of fun, and it, again, brings you through this really cool forest setting. There's a curse on the forest, so it's not like the most lush and beautiful thing, but the whole sort of plot and idea of the book has to do with nature. And so this was a really fun read, and I think this would be a great springtime read too if you haven't read it yet. It was a lot of fun. I have another book for this question that I wasn't sure if I wanted to throw in or not, because I think the vibe of it is a lot more like autumn themed, but the nature of it in general is just so vivid, and I can't like not mention it, I guess. So it's The Enchantment of Ravens by Margaret Rogerson. And this is a story that has to do with fae. It follows a woman named Isabel, who is a very talented painter. And she lives in this town that's like very close to sort of the fae courts. And she gets a lot of clients who are fae who commission portraits and stuff from her. She ends up on this adventure because basically the prince of the autumn court commissions the painting, and she ends up drawing a human emotion on his face. And the fae in the story are very like, it's almost like kind of uncanny because they're humanoid, but they're like so different in like the emotions and stuff they can express. So the fact that he ends up with this very human emotion on his face gets him in trouble with the court, and she ends up on basically a mission to kind of try to correct the painting and save his reputation. And again, this has some very like autumny feel because her companion is again the prince of the autumn court, but they do end up traveling through a couple of the other courts themselves, including the springtime court. So it was just really fun to see like how the seasons worked in this book, and the way Margaret Rogerson writes is so lush and vivid, and you feel like you're there. And so this is a really fun book that again brings you through a couple of the seasons. I will say it is mostly an autumn fall vibe, but it's so beautiful. I couldn't not mention it. It's one of my favorite sort of like nature-y books. Question 3 is, show us a book with a beautiful cover. Once again, I have a couple books for this because I couldn't decide. The first one is Stardaughter by Shweta Thakkar. This one isn't, again, particularly like springtimey, but like look at that cover. Oh my god. I actually believe this is the same person who illustrated the cover for An Enchantment of Ravens as well. She gets commissioned to do a lot of artwork for books because obviously it's stunning. Again, this one is kind of more about the cosmos and whatnot. It's not particularly springy, but it's just so beautiful. I love the black and the gold. She's got this glowing like lotus, and her hair is like this beautiful silvery, very like celestial glowing just element, and it's so pretty. I love this cover. This was mostly a cover buy for me. I did enjoy the story a lot. It follows a girl named Sheetal, and she is half star. Her mother is a full star, and so she kind of has to sort of balance her human life with the calling she feels to join her mother in the heavens. There's this really cool like competition element where she ends up sort of having to prove herself to her star family and kind of help their good name and in the courts. And yeah, it's really cool. It was a fun story. And again, this cover is absolutely stunning. There's a couple really cool special editions of this floating around as well, but honestly, I think the original cover is beautiful on its own right. The other book I have for this is, I think, a little bit more of an appropriate spring read, and I love the cover so much, and I've talked about this book a million times on my channel at this point, but it is The House on the Cerulean Sea. It has this beautiful, whimsical illustrated cover of this house sitting on like this really crazy jagged cliff. I love the little like minivan thing that's hanging out outside the house. I don't know, I love the vibe this cover gives off. And I think it really speaks for the story very well, just the feeling that it sort of gives you. And I think this is a really fun read for spring actually, because it follows this character Linus, and he's a social worker basically. He goes around and checks up on these orphanages for magical children to make sure that they're safe, and he lives a very like unfulfilling life, but he doesn't quite admit that to himself quite right away. He's got this very dreary corporate job in this very dreary city. It's always gray and rainy, and again, he's not quite willing to admit to himself like how depressed and unfulfilled he is. And he ends up getting this assignment to visit this orphanage that's out on this island further, out than he's ever been. And there's this beautiful beach and it's sunny. And so sort of the transition of him going from this city to finding his true home at this orphanage with this family, and just sort of the weather sort of reflecting the change in his mood. I think it's a great sort of springtime read because, like, again, you're going from sort of this dreary, like almost wintry feel to this happy sunny feel, and I love that sort of transition, and I think that fits spring really well. So I definitely recommend this as a good spring read, even a summer read, honestly. It's, again, got that very summery or nice weather vibe, but I just basically recommend that everyone read this because it is a magical book. The next question is, spring is about fresh starts. A great time to start a series. What would you recommend? So this is quite a large series, and it's probably not for everybody because it is kind of falls under the epic fantasy umbrella, but I honestly suggest starting the Wheel of Time series. This is the first one, The Eye of the World, and it's sort of like House in the Cerulean Sea. It kind of has that element of coming out of winter and going into into spring. And especially in this first book, actually, the change of the season has been really delayed because this force of evil has started to exert its influence on the land. Nothing's growing quite as it should, so that's part of the mystery they're trying to solve, is like, why is it still winter in this first book? And this first one kind of has a lot of parallels with like Lord of the Rings. It's familiar. You have this sort of quest journey. You've got these three young men who, one's kind of serious, one's like a jokester, and then you have like your hero chosen one character. But it's a lot of fun. This is a 15 book series. I'm on book 7. So it's a commitment. But I think this is a really great time to pick this series up because Amazon is doing a adaptation of it. They're doing a series starring Rosamund Pike. She plays this character named Moiraine, who is a magical woman who kind of comes into these small town guys' lives and starts them off on this quest to defeat evil. And the first season covers, I believe, elements of the first 3 books. And I will say, I think those first 3 books you can get out of the way like really fast. They lead into each other very well. The series kind of starts to shift a little bit after that, where I feel like each book is kind of more of like a commitment. Not that it's bad, but it's a lot of world building. Obviously, there's 15 books. It's this high fantasy setting, but it's a really interesting fantasy setting because this is technically our world. Every book sort of starts with this passage in the first chapter, which reads, "The wheel of time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades into myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that it gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the Third Age by some, an age yet to come, an age long past, a wind rose in the mountains of mist." And then it goes into the story there. So it's just this concept of like this wheel constantly turning, and this feels kind of like a medieval fantasy at first, but it has these kind of hidden elements that like hint that our present is their past and some sort of like apocalyptic event happened and sort of magic has been given birth again in this world. And I don't know, it's a really fun concept to me. Yeah, it's again definitely a commitment, but I think new season, new year-ish, it's a great time to start this, especially with the show coming out. And if you want to be kind of more in the know about what's going to happen, definitely recommend. The next question is, it's almost time to start reading outside. Have you been brave enough? No. Again, I live in New England. It's still pretty cold outside. There's still patches of snow on the ground. We haven't quite had a nice enough day to really break out the shorts and the lawn chairs yet. So I'm still reading inside. Hopefully soon, in the next month or so, I can kind of start laying out like a blanket in the grass in the sunshine and reading. But the spring is a little delayed here. It's more of a mud season than a truly like warm, nice time to be outside. So in my daydreams, I can read outside, but not currently in reality, unfortunately. The next prompt is spring cleaning. What are some books that you're planning to unhaul? I actually recently did an unhaul video. I am kind of constantly reviewing my shelves and picking a couple that like I'm just not feeling quite so much anymore in order to make room for new books. A couple books I think I've recently kind of taken off my shelves that didn't make it into the last unhaul video were A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. I tried reading this shortly after it came out and I just didn't really connect with the main character. I didn't love her. I've never read Naomi Novik, and I'm still willing to give her a chance. Actually, Spinning Silver is on my TBR for this month, but I just didn't really connect with that story very much. And I've heard it's had sort of some controversy, and I never quite got far enough to kind of make an opinion about those particular elements of the book. But I'm not really super interested. I've got so many books on my TBR that just, if I don't love a book, I don't want to spend the time reading it and not enjoying it, you know? So I've officially put that one in my get rid of pile. And another one is The Roommate, and I don't remember the author at the moment. But it was a romance book. It is a romance book that follows a girl who just moved from New York to California, and she thinks she's moving in with an old family friend, but he's in a band and he's gonna be going on tour, so he's subletting his room, and he ends up renting it to a man who is in the porn industry. And so you have kind of this sort of clash of backgrounds, because she's from this really like uptight family who's all about sort of their reputation and their image, and this guy who has a very not typical career. And I did enjoy like the banter between the two characters. The forced proximity thing was fun, but it just like wasn't my favorite romance, and it was trying to be very like sex positive, but it just came off as weird. I don't know. Not my favorite book, and it's coming out with a sequel. And I was debating like whether or not I wanted to read it. And when I finally decided like I'm not interested, I was like, well, what am I even keeping the first book for then if I'm not like interested in this series? So I am letting that one go. And those are really the only two books that I can think of that I've recently sort of unhauled. And nothing on my shelves is really yelling at me since. So I think I'm good for now. The next and last question is follow-up. Which ones will you replace them with? Oh man. It's hard to say. I'm kind of like I like to bargain shop, so I never quite know like what I'm gonna come across. I have a bunch of books on my like Goodreads TBR that I'm kind of always on the lookout for, but I don't know if I have any super planned purchases in the next couple of weeks. I have picked up a couple in like recently, including Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. That just came out like 2 weeks ago. So that, I guess, replaced one of the books I'm planning on unhauling. But yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of... book shopping is a comfort hobby for me, so I'm sort of kind of constantly looking for a good deal, and I don't quite know what I'm going to replace them with, but I'm sure it'll be something, and I'm sure I'll do a haul video about it, so keep an eye out for that. All right, and that wraps up the springtime book tag. I love spring, and reading outside is such a fun thing for me. I'm really excited to be able to do that soon. So yeah, if you're interested in doing this tag, feel free and tag me in it if you do, so I can go and watch it. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.